Pale faces, high foreheads, and leaded lips. Hey guys, tonight, we're going to take a slow stroll through a world of mirrors, powders, and painfully tight corsets. Imagine yourself in a quiet, candlelit room, maybe with a cup of something warm, ready to drift gently through the oddly meticulous world of medieval beauty. This isn't glamorous in the way magazines tell us today, and it's certainly not relaxing for the people who had to endure it. But it's fascinating, subtle, and just strange enough to quietly pull you in. Medieval beauty was complicated. It was equal parts superstition, social expectation, and trial and error with questionable chemicals. And it wasn't just about looking good, it was a signal of status, morality, and even spiritual virtue. A pale face meant you weren't slaving in the fields, a high forehead suggested intelligence and nobility, and perfectly plucked eyebrows indicated that you had time, money, and patience. Let's start with the most obvious feature, skin. Pale skin was everything. Being tan meant you worked outdoors, which was fine for peasants but not ideal for royalty or the upper class. So, women, and sometimes men, went to great lengths to achieve a porcelain glow. And how did they do this? Well, here's where things get a little toxic. Lead-based face powders were common. Yes, lead. You'd rub it on your cheeks, forehead, even lips. It made you look luminous, and in small doses, it was harmless, sort of. But leave it on too long or ingest it accidentally, and you could experience hair loss, rashes, or worse. Some women did, in fact, look stunning. Others looked, let's say, like very pale, slightly ill ghosts. High foreheads were another obsession. Hairlines were plucked mercilessly to create the illusion of a taller forehead. Queens and noblewomen often used tweezers, knives, and whatever tools they could find to achieve this intellectual look. And it wasn't subtle. Entire decades were defined by forehead trends, the higher, the better. Ladies in court would wake up each morning, stare in the mirror, and gently bleed from plucking, all in the name of beauty. Eyebrows and hairlines were also carefully manipulated. Plucking was everywhere, and some women even shaved off parts of their hair entirely to create symmetry or adhere to fashion. Wigs were fashionable too, especially among the wealthy. Hairpieces allowed for elaborate styles that defied gravity and common sense, and sometimes contained scented oils to mask the natural smells of medieval cities. Because if you were going to endure lead powder and plucked brows, at least you could smell like roses. Let's float over to the lips, because yes, they mattered. Red lips were desirable, and since modern lipsticks didn't exist, women used mixtures of crushed berries, carmine, and sometimes mercury compounds. Delicious, right? The pigments could stain, fade, and occasionally cause mild poisoning. But appearance mattered more than comfort, so many endured it with patience, adjusting their expressions carefully to avoid smudging. Cheeks were another canvas. Rouge, usually made from cinnabar, which is basically mercury sulfide, was dabbed generously to give a lively, youthful flush. And sometimes, it could indeed make you look lively, until the mercury started having its subtle neurological effects. This was a world where beauty and mild toxicity were practically synonymous. Moving beyond the face, let's consider the body. The ideal female silhouette varied across regions and decades, but one constant was the corset. Tight lacing was meant to create a narrow waist, exaggerated hips, and a graceful posture. Noblewomen endured hours of strapping, adjusting, and occasionally fainting, all for the appearance of refinement. Pregnant women, naturally, had to navigate corsets with care, though fashion often overruled comfort. Some corsets even deformed ribs or shifted internal organs slightly, nothing that would kill you immediately, just enough to make sitting, breathing, and walking interesting. Feet, too, were part of the visual equation. Pointed shoes were highly fashionable in late medieval Europe. The longer and more exaggerated the point, the higher your status. Shoemakers sometimes extended toes artificially, forcing toes into uncomfortable positions for the sake of elegance. Imagine walking through cobbled streets in slippers that could barely fit your toes, all while maintaining poise. Fashion over comfort was a consistent theme. Jewelry and adornments played a supporting role. Pearls, gold, and gemstones weren't just decorative, they were status symbols. They indicated wealth, refinement, and the ability to survive heavy powders, tight corsets, and toxic cosmetics. Ladies might pin jewels in their hair, attach chains to their gowns, or drape pearls across their foreheads, all while keeping an expression of serene detachment. Because nothing says beauty like looking effortlessly calm while slowly poisoning yourself with your own makeup. Diet, naturally, contributed to the overall appearance. Pale, delicate features required a life of minimal sun exposure, gentle exercise, and a diet that didn't stain the skin with unwanted hues. Wealthy women avoided labor-intensive foods, sticking to soft breads, broths, and lightly cooked meats. Peasants didn't have that luxury. Their skin told the story of work, sun, and survival, which made them less beautiful by aristocratic standards. But beyond cosmetics and diet, behavior itself was part of beauty. Gentle speech, calm demeanor, and careful posture were all expected. A noblewoman's value was measured not only by her face but by her ability to project patience, grace, and submission, at least publicly. Emotional meltdowns, loud laughter, or improper gestures could mar an otherwise flawless appearance. Beauty was holistic, skin, hair, posture, voice, and composure all needed to harmonize. Even perfumes had their place. Lavender, rose, and sometimes musk were used to mask odors, both from the body and the environment. Remember, medieval cities weren't known for sanitation, so smelling pleasant was a minor miracle. Perfumed gloves, scented handkerchiefs, and even aromatic powders kept noblewomen at least partly shielded from the olfactory reality of daily life. Now, let's drift briefly to men, because they weren't entirely exempt. Pale skin, trimmed beards, and well-kept hair were fashionable. Wigs weren't as common for men until later, but careful grooming, scented oils, and occasionally cosmetic powders helped maintain the aristocratic image. Being handsome wasn't just vanity, it was a social tool, demonstrating wealth, lineage, and control over one's environment. Ultimately, medieval beauty was slow, meticulous, and occasionally hazardous. Lead, mercury, tight clothing, and carefully manipulated hairstyles were all part of a broader system of social hierarchy and personal expression. It wasn't about comfort, it was about maintaining an image that signaled status, virtue, and refinement. And somehow, despite the toxicity and discomfort, people managed to survive, often passing these traditions down to the next generation. So, as you imagine yourself in a quiet medieval chamber, perhaps with a faint candle flickering, picture a noblewoman sitting patiently before a mirror, plucking hairs, dabbing powders, and adjusting her corset. She's pale, perfectly proportioned, and mildly poisoned by her own cosmetics. She is, by the standards of her time, beautiful. And you can drift gently, knowing that in this strange, meticulous world of appearance and status, patience, ritual, and a tiny bit of chemistry defined elegance, strange potions, toxic powders, and the pursuit of perfection. Alright, let's settle back into a quiet, dimly lit chamber, where the faint scent of herbs hangs in the air. Tonight, we continue exploring the odd, meticulous, and occasionally hazardous world of medieval beauty. We've covered pale skin, high foreheads, tight corsets, and carefully plucked eyebrows. Now, let's float into some of the stranger rituals, potions, and cosmetic practices that defined elegance for the wealthy and aspirational alike. One of the more creative remedies involved teeth. White teeth were desirable, naturally, but without modern toothpaste, people had to improvise. Abrasive powders, sometimes made from powdered shells or crushed bones, were rubbed on teeth to whiten them. A bit of charcoal here, a pinch of salt there, and voila, a smile that gleamed under candlelight. Of course, repeated use could erode enamel, making teeth sensitive, weak, and sometimes slightly alarming when smiling too widely. But the appearance of refinement mattered more than comfort or dental longevity. Eyes were another focus. Pale, delicate skin around the eyes was prized, so women often used cucumber slices, damp cloths, or chilled herbs to reduce puffiness. Some tried more dramatic measures, like applying lead-based, whitening, powders around the eyes to create the illusion of luminosity. It worked, at least visually, though side effects included irritation, mild swelling, and sometimes headaches. One could almost imagine a noblewoman blinking cautiously to avoid rubbing her eyes too much, fearful that her carefully applied, slightly toxic powders would be undone. Now, let's drift toward a particularly curious practice: hair bleaching. Long, light hair was associated with youth and virtue. Naturally blonde or light brown hair was a gift from nature, but darker-haired women often resorted to concoctions made from various chemicals, herbs, and occasionally lye. The mixture might be applied repeatedly to achieve the desired sun-kissed hue. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it scorched hair into brittle, straw-like strands. Yet, persistence was key. Fashion demanded it, and noblewomen were nothing if not persistent. Perfumes and scented oils were not merely optional, they were essential. Scent helped mask body odor, the pervasive smells of medieval cities, and occasionally the faintly metallic tang of cosmetics themselves. Lavender, rosewater, rosemary, and even more exotic oils were applied to hair, skin, and clothing. Perfumed gloves and handkerchiefs were popular accessories, subtly signaling sophistication and refinement. Imagine the careful ritual: patting scented oils into hair, dabbing on powdered rouge, adjusting pearls and jewels, all in a precise, repeated choreography of elegance. And then there were nails. Yes, fingernails and toenails mattered, though in ways slightly different from today. Nails were cleaned meticulously and sometimes polished with natural pigments. Dark red or reddish-brown stains were fashionable, applied from crushed berries or a mixture of more exotic ingredients. The goal was not just beauty but a quiet declaration of status: you had time, patience, and resources to maintain even the smallest details of appearance. The pursuit of high foreheads also led to some rather inventive, if uncomfortable, practices. Women didn't merely pluck hair at the hairline, some shaved portions of the scalp entirely, creating a smooth canvas that highlighted intelligence, virtue, and adherence to courtly fashion. Pain, irritation, or temporary hair loss were all accepted risks. This was beauty as ritual, precision, and slight suffering, a daily meditation on the art of appearance. Of course, these practices weren't universally safe. Lead-based powders, mercury pigments, and abrasive teeth treatments could slowly poison the body. Chronic headaches, fatigue, and mild neurological effects were common, yet they were often interpreted as signs of diligence rather than warning signs. A pale, perfectly powdered face was worth a little discomfort, even if it meant your hair felt brittle, your skin itchy, or your teeth sensitive. Beauty demanded endurance. Men, while less extreme in cosmetics, also participated in these rituals. A well-groomed beard, clean-shaven cheeks, scented oils, and powdered faces were sometimes part of a nobleman's morning routine. Hair was combed, occasionally curled or waved, and sometimes adorned with ribbons or small ornaments. Men were less subjected to tight corsets or toxic powders, but they were expected to signal status through cleanliness, posture, and controlled grooming. Beyond cosmetics, clothing played a crucial role in beauty standards. Rich fabrics, embroidered gowns, and carefully fitted garments framed the body, accentuating the narrow waist, high chest, and long limbs that were fashionable. Jewelry, pearls, and precious metals complemented the ensemble, creating a harmonious presentation of elegance. Every detail, from the tilt of a hat to the placement of a brooch, mattered. Appearance was a ritualized performance, repeated daily, and refined through observation, trial, and subtle adjustments. Even diet was carefully regulated to maintain desired looks. Pale skin, delicate hands, and refined posture were partly the result of careful food choices. Nobles often avoided overexposure to the sun, ate soft and lightly cooked foods, and adhered to meals considered humorally balanced. Rich sauces, lightly cooked meats, and soft breads were preferred, while rustic, sun-drenched vegetables were less fashionable. Beauty was, in part, a reflection of self-control and access to resources, privilege literally written on the body. And yet, despite all this effort, failures were inevitable. Hair could yellow or break, powders might cake or flake, corsets might pinch, and cosmetics might irritate. Yet the pursuit continued, ritualized and patient. Small adjustments, repeated daily, maintained the appearance of control and refinement. Beauty was as much about persistence and ritual as about innate features. Even death didn't halt the obsession with beauty. Noblewomen were often prepared with cosmetics, perfumed oils, and carefully arranged hair before burial. Powdered faces, colored cheeks, and delicate adornments were part of the final presentation. In death as in life, appearance mattered, ritualized to the very end. So, as you picture yourself in this quiet medieval chamber, perhaps watching a candle flicker on the wall, imagine a noblewoman sitting patiently before a mirror. She plucks, powders, perfumes, and arranges, enduring small discomforts for the sake of ritual, status, and societal expectation. She is pale, her forehead high, her lips colored delicately, her hair perfectly arranged, and her expression calm. Every movement, every detail, is a meditation on beauty. And in this slow, meticulous, slightly hazardous practice, we glimpse the world of medieval elegance, a world where patience, endurance, and careful ritual defined what it meant to be beautiful, regional rituals, curious remedies, and cosmetic disasters. Alright, let's settle back into the quiet, flickering light of a medieval chamber. Tonight, we'll drift further into the world of beauty, examining regional variations, unusual remedies, and a few cosmetic mishaps that highlight just how committed people were to looking fashionable, even at personal risk. Beauty standards varied across Europe, and the differences are fascinating when you slow down and look. In Italy, during the Renaissance's early stirrings, women prized long, flowing hair, pale skin, and high foreheads. They sometimes powdered their faces with mixtures including lead, rice flour, or even crushed pearls. Jewelry was modest but elegant, often draped along the neckline or woven into braids. Perfume scented the air, and elaborate hairstyles signaled status. Even small gestures, a tilted head, a carefully lowered gaze, were part of the performance of elegance. Meanwhile, in France, extravagance took a slightly different form. The French court loved ornamentation, from elaborate gowns to high collars and lace cuffs. Hairstyles could reach impressive heights, sometimes requiring wooden frames or padding to hold elaborate braids and curls. Cosmetics were applied liberally, pale powdered faces, blushed cheeks, and carefully colored lips. The French also favored lead-based powders and mercury in small amounts, as subtle toxicity was considered a sign of sophistication rather than hazard. And just as in Italy, perfumes and oils masked odors while signaling refinement. England, by contrast, embraced a quieter elegance. Beauty was less flamboyant, relying more on subtlety and precision. Pale skin was prized, but powdering was generally lighter. High foreheads and neatly plucked hairlines remained popular, though English women often favored simple hairstyles accented with ribbons or small jeweled pins. Cosmetics were used cautiously, partly due to climate, damp weather could ruin elaborate powders, and partly due to modesty. The English approach was practical, elegant, and understated, though still subject to the occasional hazardous experiment with lead or mercury. Now, let's float toward the more unusual remedies and rituals. Some women applied mixtures of egg whites and honey to tighten the skin. Others used mixtures of rosewater, vinegar, or even crushed gemstones to exfoliate or brighten the complexion. A select few experimented with bizarre poultices, powdered roots, animal fats, and plant extracts combined into creams or pastes applied to the face and neck. Effectiveness varied, sometimes leaving the skin soft and smooth, sometimes leaving redness, irritation, or a lingering odor. Persistence, however, was always valued over comfort. One particularly extreme example comes from the German courts. Noblewomen there sometimes applied arsenic-based powders to the skin to achieve pale, luminous faces. Arsenic, of course, is poisonous, but small doses were tolerated as part of the beauty ritual. Women would carefully apply the powder each morning, then step into the sunlight to judge the effect. If the skin glowed, the risk was worth it. If not, adjustments were made, sometimes adding more powder or layering additional ingredients. It was slow, meticulous, and mildly dangerous, but elegance demanded perseverance. Hair dyeing practices also varied. In Italy and France, blonde hair was fashionable, so women used mixtures of saffron, chamomile, or even mercury-based solutions to lighten darker hair. In England and Germany, chestnut and auburn shades were popular, achieved through infusions of walnut shells, herbs, or iron-rich mixtures. Hair was combed carefully, styled with pins and ribbons, and sometimes perfumed with rosewater or lavender oil. Frizz, breakage, or unexpected chemical reactions were accepted risks, minor inconveniences in the pursuit of beauty. Even minor injuries were incorporated into aesthetic practice. A scar might be concealed with a layer of white lead powder or carefully placed hair. Freckles or blemishes were sometimes painted over using crushed minerals or berry juices. In a subtle, patient way, women turned imperfections into manageable, correctable features, a quiet ritual of control over appearance. Corsets and tight lacing remained central to body aesthetics. Across regions, the goal was similar, a narrow waist, defined posture, and the appearance of delicate elegance. Methods varied, some used steel boning, others layered cloth for support. Occasional fainting spells or slight organ displacement were considered minor drawbacks compared to the visual impact. Women endured it patiently, adjusting straps and laces daily to maintain a consistent silhouette. Men, again, participated in subtler ways. Well-groomed hair, lightly powdered faces, and trimmed beards signaled status. Clothing was fitted to emphasize height and broad shoulders, sometimes stiffened with padding or layered fabric. Shoes, gloves, and belts completed the ensemble. Even without toxic powders or tight corsets, presentation was meticulous, a ritualized display of refinement and wealth. Perfumes and scented accessories remained central to both genders. Lavender, rose, and rosemary were staples, sometimes blended with more exotic scents from the Middle East or Asia. Scented gloves, handkerchiefs, and even ribbons subtly indicated refinement. In crowded towns and castles, pleasant aromas distinguished the elite from the everyday inhabitants, creating a sensory hierarchy as subtle as it was pervasive. Finally, let's consider cosmetic failures. Even the wealthiest and most diligent nobles occasionally fell victim to overzealous experimentation. Over-applied powders could cake and crack, hair dyes might leave brassy streaks, and poultices occasionally caused irritation or mild burns. Sometimes, entire social events were disrupted by unexpected cosmetic mishaps. Yet, these minor disasters were absorbed into the ritual, powders reapplied, hair restyled, patience exercised. Beauty was a slow, repetitive art, practiced daily with quiet diligence. So, as you imagine yourself in the quiet glow of candlelight, picture these scenes: women carefully applying powders, adjusting corsets, arranging jewels, men smoothing hair and trimming beards, scented oils wafting in the air, powdered faces reflecting faint lamplight. It's slow, meticulous, slightly hazardous, and oddly comforting in its routine. Every detail mattered, and every small adjustment contributed to an elaborate, ritualized performance of elegance. And in this calm, patient, and sometimes mildly toxic world, beauty was more than appearance, it was ritual, endurance, and social communication. Pale faces, high foreheads, tight laces, and scented gloves weren't mere vanity. They were a slow meditation on status, discipline, and tradition, passed carefully from generation to generation.